The air in the rooftop bar wasn't cool. It was thick, humming with the bass from the speakers below and the unspoken current arcing between them. Leo, a photographer with calloused hands and a worn leather jacket, watched the ice melt in his whiskey glass. He wasn't looking at the glittering skyline. His entire focus was on Alara. She was a museum archivist, all elegant lines and quiet intelligence, now tracing a bead of condensation down her own glass, her cheeks flushed from a single cocktail and the height. Their third date. The conversation had been easy, but now it had dipped into a heavy, charged silence. He saw it, the slight tremble in her fingers, the way her gaze kept darting to his lips then away, a war between wanting and propriety. He set his glass down with a decisive click. The twist wasn't in the words, it was in the action. He didn't reach for her hand. Instead, his index finger, warm and sure, lifted from the table and gently, so gently, brushed the delicate, frantic pulse point at the side of her wrist. Her breath hitched audibly. The entire city seemed to mute. "Your heartbeat," Leo murmured, his voice a low rasp against the distant traffic, "is telling a much more interesting story than you are." Her eyes flew to his, wide and startled, caught. Alara's lips parted, but no sound emerged. Leo's touch remained, a steady, grounding pressure on her wrist, his thumb now making a slow, deliberate sweep across the sensitive skin of her inner forearm. It wasn't a caress meant to arouse, it was a mapping, a study. "This place," he continued, his voice still low, intimate, carving a private space in the public night, "holds all your tension." The long hours under museum lights, hunched over ancient texts. He could feel the fine muscles, strung tight like violin strings, begin to soften under his touch. This was the second place, the inner forearm, a landscape of vulnerability. She let out a shaky exhale, a surrender. "How do you know that?" she whispered. Leo offered a faint, knowing smile. "I read more than light and shadows, Alara." He guided her hand, palm up, onto the cool table between them, his fingers never leaving her skin. He was building something, a scaffold of trust, touch by deliberate touch. The initial shock of the first contact was evolving into a thrumming anticipation. What had felt like an invasion was now a revelation, and she was leaning into it, her body angling toward his across the small table. The noise of the bar faded into an indistinct murmur. Leo's gaze never wavered from hers as his hand released her wrist, only to travel upwards, his touch feather light. He didn't go for the obvious places, not her cheek, not her neck. Instead, his fingertips brushed the subtle, delicate junction just behind the lobe of her ear, tracing the invisible line where her jaw met her skull. The third place. A spot so often ignored, yet wired with nerves. Alara's eyes fluttered closed for a second, a full body shiver cascading through her that had nothing to do with the evening breeze. "You carry your stress here, too," he observed, his voice a husky note. "The weight of all that history you preserve." His touch was firm yet tender, a gentle pressure that seemed to unlock a deep-seated knot she hadn't even acknowledged. When her eyes opened again, the wariness was gone, replaced by a dazed, trusting warmth. He was an architect, and she was willingly offering him the blueprint. Leo leaned in closer, the scent of his leather jacket and clean soap cutting through her perfume. "You're thinking too much," he whispered, his breath stirring the fine hairs at her temple. "Stop curating this, just feel it." The command, soft yet undeniable, shattered the last of her reservations. A soft, almost imperceptible sound escaped her, a surrender. Leo didn't smile in triumph. His expression remained one of intense focus, as if she were the most captivating subject he'd ever framed. He withdrew his hand from behind her ear, and for a heart-stopping moment, Alara thought the spell was broken. But he was only moving to pull her chair closer, the legs scraping softly on the rooftop concrete. The distance between them vanished. He was now a landscape she could feel the heat of. "The fourth place," he said, his words not for anyone but her, "isn't about touch for its own sake." His hand came up, but again, he defied expectation. He didn't cup her face. Instead, he let the back of his knuckles, rough and warm, graze slowly down the side of her neck, following the elegant, taut line of her trachea down to the fragile hollow at the base of her throat. He paused there, his touch a brand. "Here," he murmured, his own breathing deepened. "This is where you swallow your unspoken words, where you hold back what you truly want to say." Her pulse hammered against his knuckles, a wild, trapped bird. She was utterly still, captured not by force, but by the terrifying precision of his understanding. The pressure in that hollow was a question, and Alara, with a courage that seemed to rush up from the very core of her, finally answered. Not with words, but with a movement. She bridged the last, negligible space between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that was less an initiation and more a culmination. It was a release of the tension he had so expertly located and soothed, a surrender to the heartbeat at her wrist, the unclenching of her forearm, the unlocked hinge of her jaw, the truth held in her throat. Leo's hand slid from her throat to cradle the nape of her neck, his fingers tangling in the soft hairs there, holding her not as a possession, but as a point of anchor in a spinning world. The kiss deepened, tasting of whiskey and want and a shocking, sweet relief. When they finally parted, breathless foreheads resting together, the city lights below had blurred into a watercolor of gold and white. "See," Leo whispered, his voice ragged at the edges. "I told you your body was telling a better story." Elara laughed, a soft, breathy, incredulous sound. "You didn't just touch 4 places, Leo," she said, her own hand coming up to rest over his heart, feeling its fierce, answering rhythm. "You read an entire map."